right, so let's see a couple of things on there. Let's just see who we all have because, all right. So I guess a quick start, Sean's not here, but Scott, is there any update on how the debugging has been going?
No, unfortunately, I haven't. I've been relying on Sean to keep track of that. So I have not sought anyone out to find status. So if there has been progress, I'm not aware of it. We'll get an update next week.
Laura, is there anything on your side?
I've been kind of out of the loop. GS Lab's been working directly with other folks.
Okay.
I think I've got an email here that we sent information on the configuration settings. It looks like we crash above a certain point. I can forward this to you. But it looks like we need help from Sean or Jordan.
Okay. So where were you forwarding to?
I can forward to whoever needs it. Who should I send it to?
If you have the addresses, I would say Scott, Sean, and Jordan. I don't know what emails you have.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Anything else on that? I know maybe we just don't have the right people on this call to make any more progress there. Let me skip the on-ramp and come back to it because I think that might take a little bit of time, and I think the other two are probably fairly quick. I got an email this morning about a paper that Stanford and, well, let's see, it was basically the Pronto team that they had. They were doing verification work. It's a research paper that I believe has been submitted to SIGCOMM, and they were able with their tooling to detect an application filtering bug. I haven't read the paper yet, so I don't know any of the particulars. Is this a known bug? I think, Scott, it would be.
So I haven't read about it, so I don't know. I don't know anything about it yet.
Okay. So having not read the paper, I'm making a presumption here that this was verifying the correctness of the data plane, and it was probably the data plane implemented in the switches. I'm just kind of guessing without having read the paper yet.
Yeah, I mean,
it's sort of. I'm sorry, Scott. Would that be someone objected?
No, I was just going to say, this if it's the type of bug you suspect it is, it could not be a bug in the runtime operational control. It could be a bug down in, whatever enforces these rules. So without reading more about it, it's like wide open, could be in multiple different places.
Yeah, I suspect that's it. And like I said, I just got this email this morning, and I'm raising it not for the sake of the bug so much. Although we may have to figure that out, because I think it's probably the P4 implementation of the UPF. And so there's 2 points here. One, this very well could make a really interesting, so the idea of presenting this TST came up, and I said we would talk about it briefly. This actually feels like something that probably is more appropriate for the users group, the community meeting, which is I've raised it here because you see the next point is about that community meeting. So I'll look a little deeper, but I'm going to suggest it as a presentation that I think the community meeting would find interesting. With respect to the TST, we are not currently bringing the P4 implementation of the UPF forward in any setting that I know of other than Pronto. Does that sound right? And I'm not sure who would speak to that, but does anyone have any counter evidence?
No counter evidence here.
All right. So
I hear of one-off kinds of situations where people are experimenting with it and still dabbling with it, but there's nothing that's kind of got a ton of momentum. I heard that OAI was doing something with it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a perfectly great topic for the community, and it can be pursued. And one day maybe it'll find its way back into the TST and become part of an official release. But for the time being, I think it's a bit of a parallel tangent, whatever track. Okay, that's I'll look at the paper and see if there's anything that needs to come back to this group. But I think that's where I will nudge that issue. So while we're on the topic of the community meeting, Denise, is there any more to say?
No, that's good.
Okay, so you can see in the minutes or the agenda there about yeah, thanks. Okay, back to on-ramp. So just a reminder, this is basically it's starting out as Ether in a box, and so at this stage, it's still a little more than just me deconstructing Ether in a box and trying to use that exercise to come up to speed on everything that's in there. And I've tripped over a few things. I'm in the process of bringing up the 5G small cell and trying to make it easier to use Fleet to bring everything up, sort of as on the path to a GitOps approach to keep Ether running. Any case, three things that I've tripped over, and I just wanted to raise them in case someone could tell me how easy it can be solved or to get it on people's radar. The first two strike me as something that we might need to revisit with respect to getting on-ramp / Ether in a box working with Fleet. And the issue is, where you tell Fleet, here's the set of bundles to bring up, basically here are the set of Helm charts. After Fleet automates that process, there's still some manual steps that you have to take. And those manual steps are spelled out in the make file where you say bring up make rock or whatever. You still have to load the models. And I'm wondering if there is an obvious way to, as Fleet updates, invokes Helm to update the rock, if there is an easy way for Fleet to also tell rock, could you please load the latest models? I believe it's doing a curl there, so I would suspect that the answer is you have to start up a container that does that for rock.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this has been shared outside of Intel, but we have a pod called, it's actually a job, I think, Kubernetes job called config loader. Which basically it executes that curl command. Like I say, there's not much to it. I haven't looked at it closely myself, but my understanding is it pushes that initial we call them mega patches. I think that's what we called them back at ONF as well. But it loads that initial mega patch after the rock has come up.
What was the pod called?
I think it was called config loader. I would have to double check. Andy,
I just wanted a reasonable thing to call it. Yeah, that doesn't have to be exact. So
yeah, do you remember Andy? Is it config loader and?
No, yeah, I don't remember. I know what you're talking about, but yeah, I haven't looked into the details.
Yeah, I mean the stuff, it fades from memory when you haven't looked at it after a while too. I don't know that it handles any kind of update cycle though. So, this was very much in the case that someone wanted to bring up an Ether without manual intervention, to load that very first mega patch in so that nobody has to go SSH in and run a curl. So it does that. Like I say, I have no idea what would happen if you tried to push like updated models through it.
Well, I mean, we could have a convention that Rock just restarted if you loaded a new model into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that they're separate things, but at some level, I'm restarting Rock if I load a new model into it.
Yeah. And we're talking about the sort of the contents of the database, not the schema, right? So not an upgrade from like either 2.1 to 2.2, but just changes to the initial data that you want loaded.
Well, okay, so maybe I'm a little confused because I thought the main thing that curl loaded was the latest models.
No, the curl loads the contents. Your sample site and your handsets in it.
Okay, I was confused about that. So how did the models get loaded?
So the models, they are, I'm gonna have to kind of remember this. I think it happens inside the Rock umbrella chart. And they are some kind of plugins that are associated with Onos config.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, your umbrella chart, usually a specific version of the umbrella chart loads specific models. We never got real far with the whole upgrade process. To upgrade from one version of the models to another, you would have to do you would either have to write a tool or update the migration tool. That Andy would do this for us back in the Pronto production days, when we had to do that kind of a migration, and I think it was usually somewhat onerous. But
like the migration tool would get us like 75% of the way, and then I would need to do some manual stuff.
Okay, so I mean, that maybe is eventually, obviously, but it is a first step. This is actually related to the canonical values file that comes after the monitoring resources. So all right, thanks, Scott. So
sure.
In terms of getting that pod into master, is that, I guess maybe that will come with an Intel end of Pronto code dump?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope it comes then. I mean, if not, it's probably such a small thing that I could just tell you what to do.
Yeah, I bet
I would have to look at it to be sure, but I mean, like I say, it's Kubernetes job that runs curl command. Probably. Maybe there's a script, or maybe there's some retries. It's not huge value intellectual property, I guess is what I'm
I
saying.
wouldn't
So
think,
yeah, it's just sort of practical engineering.
yeah. Okay. All right, I think I captured the gist of it there. So likewise, Andy, with the customization of the dashboard, could that be packaged? I forget now if it's already packaged as a resource, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it's loaded in, the dashboard is loaded into a config map, and then Grafana is configured to just look for config map with certain labels and load it as a dashboard.
So then maybe this just falls back to some rather modest change to the Helm chart. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same, the fleet bundle, so that the customization file that gets triggered. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, so you want fleet to do what it needs to do to load that config map.
Without an extra manual step, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we have a clean way to do it right now, as far as I know, but one thing that we've explored in the past is just taking those dashboards and packaging them up in their own Helm chart, and then you just load that Helm chart and it'll create the config maps, and then so that would be a way to get Fleet to do it. Fleet has actually a bunch of things that Fleet can do. You can also use a tool called Customize from Fleet, which lets you apply Kubernetes resources that are not contained in the Helm chart. And I could give you a little demo of that sometime. So
Okay, thanks.
yeah, there's plenty of ways to do it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, this gets me to the last thing that I have tripped over and I'm still fumbling with. And I didn't know quite how to label it, so I called it canonical/minimal SD core value file. So Eric, Ether in a Box comes with a values file for the core. This is true for all the components, but it's especially true for the core. And we've got probably dozens of these override files living in various places, and it's really hard to know what the right one is. So the one I'm showing now, and I don't know that you can read it, it doesn't actually matter in terms of detail all that much, but this is AJ's override value file. And I had not seen this anywhere else, but they're metric func, and I have no idea where this version 019 dev comes from, and what BHELANKUR is, except it looks like a username. Does anyone know?
Yeah, that's Ankur's ID.
That is
and
his
this
ID, okay.
ID, yeah.
So
And
this is
yeah,
is this a private?
so which parts did you find this 5G values file in? What
So
is the
I'm
part of
finding this in AJ's values file for the core, 5G core.
AJ's file? That's what I want to know, which folder, like Ether in a box, or this is in.
Well, it's when he was doing Ether in a box with the 5G small cell, yeah.
Right. So that time, I think metric function wasn't available to him. Like the Helm chart wasn't merged yet, the code wasn't merged. So he was using a private image for that probably. But I think this is already present in Ether in a box, SD core 5G values, latest, whatever you have, you can just use that. That would already have the correct image for this.
Okay, thank you. That would explain it. And so now I have to figure out if there's anything else. So this is really my point. It wasn't, I was just using this as an example. My point is, it's really hard. So think of me as a naive user who doesn't know where everything is.
Okay.
And is trying to piece together everything and trying to figure out what is the right override file for what I want to do. And what I think has happened is everyone has concocted their own override file for their particular situation, which kind of makes sense. It's because the override file is for your configuration. But from a starting point of view, it seemed like it'd be really helpful to have the blessed file and then a set of instructions as to how you will need to edit it, as opposed to having to edit something that's already been edited, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I mean, I would probably ask where you picked up this folder, and when you mentioned it's Ajay's files, I mean, I don't think that is.
This literally came off of his laptop. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's not probably the starting point for anybody who is using it. So
well,
everybody starts.
Except he's right. So the reason I'm actually not starting with that, I'm starting with Ether in a box, but I've got this sort of side by side because I'm trying to get the 5G small cell, and he's the only person that's gotten Sericom 5G small cell to work.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So now, all right. So let me put it this way: can I treat the override file that comes in Ether in a box as the canonical version? Is that a fair statement? Maybe it is now. Maybe it didn't used to be.
No, it is the one that's the de facto override file to go with.
Okay.
And yes, like you mentioned, there are probably we need to add other steps on what you want to update and how you want to update for people who haven't used this override file before. Yes, we should add that portion somewhere in our document.
So let me ask Andy, would you agree with that statement that the Ether in the box override file is the right one?
Yeah, for people that are building on Ether in a box, I think that would be the logical starting point.
And would you say it's minimal, or does it have cruft in it that if you were, trying to to build a pristine version of it? Do you have any sense of that?
I don't know that I've looked at it recently. I think in the past I've taken out all of the cruft that I knew was cruft. I guess the challenge with the SD core values file for a lot of people, I think, is that you need to specify the list of subscriber MCs in there. And so it's not like you can just use, if you're setting up your own 4G or 5G setup, you maybe can't just use it without any changes. You need to go in and make some edits on parts of it.
Okay, so that's what I was going to challenge, and if there's another way to do this. And so now let me connect the dots between that statement and with Aether Rock. What basically Aether Rock was doing with this extra curl that had to be handled out of band was loading in an initial set of data into the Rock database. And effectively, this is the same thing, because I could come in through Rock and enter the MZs and everything and the subscriber info, correct?
You would need another step on this also. There are the keys and values of the MCs that you need to add through this only.
It can, all right, so I wanted to draw a line between, you could, in a clean world, you would come in through the API to load the data into the database. And back to the curl issue, you could have done that, I would guess, Scott, is that correct, by making API calls?
So the stuff that Badri has for the security database is not managed by Rock. I think that's why we have two different things.
Right.
It's the access keys for I forget the name of the service, but the 5G security service. Rock doesn't manage those keys, so it's outside of our purview in the mega patch.
All right, but on the other hand, all subscriber related.
Like subscriber slice information, all that information like PLMN, whatever else, everything goes through Rock, but this particular security stuff still goes through this SD core file.
All right, so good. So I think this is exactly what I was trying to get to. So loading some bootstrap data into your database is an important step, and it's outside of bringing the system up. Arguably, you could make an argument that it didn't really belong in the Rock file. It's in the values file. It was a convenient place to put it, to bootstrap it. But there could be a separate step in here that had collected all the data that you would need to load into Rock. And in fact, what you could have is a startup script, so to speak, that literally made calls against the API. I don't know, maybe as opposed, I don't know, Scott, how you're actually bootstrapping the database when you do that mega patch.
So yeah, the mega patch is just one big API call, I believe. It could have been broken into a series of smaller API calls, but I believe right now it's one big API call that kind of sets the whole database in one fell swoop. It's got all the subscribers, the sites, everything is there. I kind of feel like that's not the best approach, because that makes the whole thing somewhat ungainly to try to update. You want to add another handset to a mega patch. It's buried in the middle of a very long file. So I've always thought that we should break mega patches into multiple pieces, but that's right now the config loader, it just loads one file.
Okay, but these are effectively the same kinds of issues, because in both cases you're bootstrapping your database for your deployment.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I know I've been going down into the weeds here a little bit, but let me pull it up and try to state a high level TST level statement here, which it would be really nice if we could refactor some of these startup things for the sake of ease of getting started, so that I didn't have to know I had to go hunt down this or that. And clearly the documentation, if it were sufficiently rich could tell you every file to go touch, but isolating all those per location specific bootstrapping database things in one place would be, it seems to me, a good step. And does that sound right?
I think so. I mean, I would say, yeah, we should
Yeah.
probably put all
All
the
right.
information.
I mean, this isn't, I'm not asking anyone to do it. I'm just in terms of
Yeah.
trying to figure out what we can, a way forward here. And if anyone else wanted to step up and do it, that'd be great. So in the spirit of these points, is there anything anyone else knows of that would be, might be sort of fall under this category of to-dos? Not hearing any, I'll assume not.
Well, so the one thing that pops to mind is there's been some interest in the community of extending the setup in some way, like adding a second UPF seems to be one that comes up frequently. And I think even some people in the community have gotten it to work on their own and contributed back their notes, you know, uploaded them somewhere and linked to them. But it would be nice to maybe, you know, pull these in and make it part of the official documentation of you know, how to do that.
Got it. Good. Yeah, that's a great one. So also slices, is that sort of in the same vein?
Yeah, I think so.
In fact, do they bring up the second UPF so they can put it in a different slice?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think Gabriel from Intel had tried this out, and I told him that we can do this with that the second slice would also point to the same UPF, and you could still, the configurations would allow it, and you can bring up another UPF. Right. Yeah, but I said we haven't tested that out. Yes. It's like how would the connections work and stuff, we haven't figured it out, but by configurations we could do the same. Yeah.
So this reminds me of another little question that I had, which is setting up the network properly is an issue, and how you do that if you're talking to a simulated or an emulated RAN versus a physical base station are different. Andy, the answer to the question I asked you the other day is you do set up a NAT to get to the AMF. Just from a refactoring point of view, that strikes me as something that there are several different little things you could do there, and I think they got added incrementally over time. I have a hunch that might be worth looking at. All right, so with that, is there anything else on people's minds? All right, let's call it a meeting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.